everyone. My name is Sean Maloney, and I'm publisher of Ship Management International, and I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest edition of the SMI podcast. The whole issue of crew management, repatriation, and crew welfare has been brought into sharp focus over recent months as shipping finds itself at the epicenter of everything geopolitical. Crew change management, once an accepted day-to-day process-driven function, finds itself battling hard with the knock-on effects of the conflict in the Middle East, for instance, and the rising oil price. Airline fuel costs are soaring and flight timings are changing almost daily, but shipping is agile and always reacts to changes in the marketplace. Well, we are lucky today to welcome into the podcast studio Niklas Weidmann and Narayan Venkatesh, who are co-founders and co-managing directors at Tilla Technologies. And according to Tilla, a crew change is a complex, stressful, and involved process and requires collaboration between dozens of people to successfully execute it. It is also a process that deeply touches the experience of a seafarer, the global community of 2 million people that keeps the shipping industry consistently moving. And recognizing the productivity and optimization challenges inherent in today's operations, Tilla saw an opportunity to transform the industry with technology. And Tilla's mission is simple. It wants to be the digital backbone to the human force that drives the shipping industry by building a trailblazing end-to-end crew change management platform that empowers crewing teams. It hopes to drive smart decisions, optimize costs, and improve the lives of the seafarers. Gentlemen, welcome to the SMI podcast.
Thanks a lot, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Nice to see you there, Nick and Narayan. And actually doing a bit of reading there on your website and noticed some good information there about Stolt Tankers who have recently taken up utilising your services there in the software platform. And I think they have more than 100 chemical parcel tankers. But just really before we start, Nick, should we start with you? Do you want to just give me a little bit of a background on Tilla, when it was set up? I know I've said a few things in the introduction there, but what was the sort of thinking behind it? When you and Narayan sort of sat down and said, come on, let's do this. What was the thinking behind setting up the business?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm happy to give you a bit of a history here. So we started working on Tilla in 2021, and it was peak COVID times. So basically, every ship owner in the world was really struggling with replacing their seafarers. Seafarers were stranded on vessels for months, and that really drew our attention to the process. Planning how can we help the shipping industry to make crew changes more efficiently? And given COVID, we're able to ship owners, ship managers, the Europe system, they all basically confirmed that COVID is an extreme situation, but not very easy to do that. Nobody really liked the status quo. And that's how it started. From there, we started building the product, the first versions of the product, and roughly a year later, 2020, selling it to more ship owners and ship managers across the world. Today, we have more than 15 customers on the platform. We're looking at roughly 700 vessels on the platform. And you already mentioned Stolt Tankers. They are the ones that got most recently announced. We're targeting ship owners, also managers, everybody that basically wants to get more efficient, cost-effective, and controlled crew changes.
Okay, perfect. Narayan, can I come on to you? I mean, and it's good to hear from Nick there with the history side of it. But when you talk to the market, and before we sort of get into the nitty-gritty of the questions, but when you talk to the market, what do they want? What do they demand? Because technology is there and it's there to help. But crew change management is a complicated process. There's no doubt about it. What are they after? What are they demanding?
Well, that's an interesting question because I think when we speak to the market, one of the first things that Nick and I have done really, I think, spent a lot of time doing over the past years is really helping the market understand that the status quo of the process is not good, and it hasn't been good for a long time. So a lot of the demand that is coming from the crewing managers, crew operators, fleet operators, so many different titles in the market. I think their real sort of need and pain is around the stress that they have to sort of absorb as they continue to do this process. And it's only getting harder. I mean, COVID made it very hard for them. The current geopolitical crises make it equally hard. So the demand or the need from them is something that helps them improve their daily lives. When it comes to the crewing leadership, they would certainly like to improve the operational processes. But beyond that, much of the needs from the crewing leadership side is not very strong, I would say, because they've more or less accepted the status quo. So a large part of the work that Nick and I have done is to really help educate the market that the status quo is not great and they really can improve and should improve.
No, you talk about operational processes, and I get what you're saying about the status quo because that's endemic. I think throughout the shipping industry, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But can you be a little bit more sort of precise on the sort of the operational processes that they wanted to see change? Do they want the whole process to be more efficient? Do they want to have more control on cost? Do they want to have more control on options to them? Could you sort of give me a little bit more sort of idea on what their demands were?
Absolutely. I think you've sort of touched upon the right characteristics of what they demand. So they do want control. They do want to they care about their budgets. It is a budget line that they have to manage. They would like to keep the vessels operational. So operational stability is really important for them, and crewing plays a big part of that role. But they understand that they also have to accommodate to a large part of the changes that happen in the shipping industry, especially spot trading. So they do need each one of these. And to unpack what I said about the status quo, they actually look to satisfy their needs with the status quo. So just to give you a little bit more concrete example, when crewing leadership understands that there's a lot of changes and disruptions that happen for their vessels, then with the current process, they just accommodate that with additional team members with broken up responsibilities that can actually work around these disruptions. So this is a way that they satisfy the need today. Of course, technology can really help improve these, and it doesn't really require broken up responsibilities of additional headcount to really sort of tackle this, but there are much better ways to sort of manage that.
Now we talked about stalled tankers, and I think there was some good articles in some of the magazines like Digital Ship and Maritime Executive, and that was good. Can you, and maybe bringing Nick in on this, could you give us some idea on what they wanted and how you sort of use the platform to actually satisfy their needs? Maybe a little bit more of a what they were particularly after as a major ship owner and a major owner of chemical parcel tankers.
So you can basically break it down into three aspects, and they translate quite nicely into the three value propositions that we take to market. The first one is process efficiency. So, roughly summarized, spending less time on managing crew changes. The second one is cost optimization and cost control. So, reducing the money that you spend on a crew change. And here, the two big buckets are flight cost and port agency fees. But we today specialize very heavily on flight cost. And the last one is insights and control, and basically improving the organization based on data and making smart adjustments to workflows, understanding how costs will be forecasted in the future, as all of that data resides with a Tilla. So here with Tilla, we were able to prove that the time spent on the process can be reduced significantly. Furthermore, we actually validated together with Stoll that they can transform the entire process by shifting the process away from masters to short team in order to free up valuable masters. That is the first bucket, talking about productivity. Then we have a couple of mechanisms in place to give them full cost control and cost optimization. I don't want to go too much into specifics here, but I just want to sort of contrast to the status quo. Basically, one of the largest cost item within crew changes, my cost, resides with vendors, which are travel agents. So you take the cost that you get from travel agents. You never know whether this is the best available cost or price in the market. But with Tilla, this transparency is fully in place. And last but not least, contrasting on the insights and control part, status quo to with Tilla. As I mentioned in the beginning, the entire process usually runs on emails. So that means a lot of data, a lot of touch points sits within emails. And there's almost no way to draw very valuable conclusions in order to improve the organization as a whole. They get monthly reports on the metrics that are most interesting to them in order to then streamline the organizations further.
Now, just on an interesting sort of to look at the process and the platform itself, with the seafarers and with the manager or the owner, they will be able to see presumably what is happening at any given time with regards to trips or flights or whatever. And is that through apps? Is that through just dialing into the website? How is that dealt with? I mean, presumably they'll just be kept up to date all the time, will they?
Yeah, today we cover a broad spectrum of from planning a crew change. So right from the early stages where there is an idea of where the vessel is visiting, the certain port calls that are coming up in the future. There's a few ideas around which seafarers would be replacing or on signing and who would be relieved. And it sort of follows through all the way into execution. Particularly to your question, Sean, about who shares the information back to the seafarer, this is a bit of something that the crewing team does. The platform does offer certain abilities to trigger communications to the seafarers, but currently, with the amount of, let's say, disruptions or changes that the vessels and the crew changes go through, the crewing teams certainly want to be in control on when these details are shared with the seafarer to also avoid them continuously receiving a ton of changes and having to accommodate or adjust to that. So the platform is flexible. It allows the crewing teams to trigger the right comms at the right time once they find that the plans are quite firmed up. I don't know if that sort of helps address the question that you had.
I just wanted to sort of get a bit of an aspect there on the physical aspect of it as a platform. But coming back to budgets, and I think this is quite important because when you're talking about the status quo, it talks about whether the industry looks at all of this in a strategic way. When you look at current budgets, how well do companies actually understand where that money goes? And I think when you talk about status quo, it's accepting what it is what it is. How does that need to change, would you say? Is it a mindset change? And what's going to force that change within the industry? Nick, do you want to have a go at that? And then, Narayan, maybe get your views?
100%. It's a very good question, actually, and it's something that we have been thinking about quite a bit, actually. And I think that the status quo is that, of course, you have a budget view, and the budget today references one headline number. It's an X euro or dollar spent on crew change. And what very often is not included in the budget is the cost of being reactive, right? And this is, of course, very much also linked to the crew change use case in itself, because you have to react on a short notice. There are last minute rebookings. The vessel might be delayed by one day, and that's why you have to take a flight that isn't the best flight. But nevertheless, these crewing budgets today are reported as outcomes, not as decisions. And we believe that until you can really see the decisions that lead to the outcome of the budget, you cannot really manage the budget. And that's exactly where we are starting with Tilla. We are looking at making trade-offs visible. We're looking at uncovering decision profiles, and therefore then moving this entire budget decision on a more strategic level than it is today.
I would like to echo what Nick said. So to over the past decades, I think crewing teams and crewing leadership have had to just accept that one big number. And their only ways to really optimize the budget was to adjust the way the organization is set up, improve their vendors, which would be travel partners, but again, with limited sort of ability to create flexibility there in terms of costs. Same with port agency costs, where there was not much of visibility or options available for the crewing leadership. So they again had to fairly accept their limitations in terms of optimizing these costs. And now with Tilla as a platform, we're able to provide all of this visibility back to them. We allow them to get granular controls around the type of partners, the type of cost elements that are involved with benchmarking. And all of this allows them a much better, let's say, control knobs around their budget. Associated to that is what Nick mentioned, which is every decision is a bit of a trade-off for the crewing team. So if you want to spend less on the flights, it does have an impact on the seafarer well-being, maybe because the flights have a red eye, and it does have impact on the vessel operations, because if the seafarer is fatigued and they come on board to the vessel, they would be quite stressed about doing physical activities when they're fatigued. So these trade-offs become visible on Tilla. So alongside a budget, which is a dollar figure or a euro figure, they can also understand the type of trade-offs, non-material trade-offs that the crewing team is doing.
Yeah, and that could be very, very important. So I think actually what you're doing here really is sort of managing efficiently managing the process rather than just we've got to pay that money, we've got to spend that cost, and this is what it's going to be. And I think really is that a difficult mindset change to force into the shipping industry? I mean, what's the sort of reaction you're getting from the marketplace when you go out and you talk to them about this?
I mean, it took some time, I think, to change the mindset of the industry, and I think it's getting easier with more companies, with more reputable companies such as Stoll signing up for Tilla, and then sort of agreeing that they want to change the way they look at crew changes and they want to transform their operations. But of course, I mean, we are ultimately creating a new category. So far, crew changes have been always seen as a travel problem for the before described reasons. It has to be seen as an end-to-end process, and therefore it has to become its own category. Yeah, we're seeing more and more examples of this in the industry.
I think you're right there, Nick. 'Cause I mean, I think, as I said in my intro there, at any one time, I think 1.5 million to 2 million seafarers are at sea, and they need to be moved around. And it's very, very important. And the last thing that they want to do is to spend hours and hours and hours on a plane trying to get home or trying to get onto their ship. So, they and it all goes back to just the way that the seafarer is regarded by the crewing manager or the employer as well. One thing you touched on it a little bit, why sort of crew change management has remained so resistant to change. I mean, compared to other parts of the maritime operation. And I'm fairly aware that sort of shipping is, I suppose, following a number of other industries as it embraces digitalization and moves down that road. But what's your view on that? Is it a technology gap, or is it more an organizational or a cultural issue? What has been the reason for this resistance to change?
My take here is I would say it's a bit of like an operational overhead that crewing teams have always had to shoulder. And the way I would characterize it is every single time that an on-signer doesn't make it to the vessel, that really causes the vessel operations to be impacted. And they shouldered that burden to ensure that vessel operations were seamless and stable. And for them, this sort of the mindset was less about technology, but they were always very stressed as teams. And any operational improvements that they had to explore, experiment with in the past would have meant that in some way they would touch something that's working and keeps the vessels running. And I would say this might have limited their ability to really explore newer options and technologies. And at the same time, I think folks in the market never really recognize this as an opportunity to improve the lives of the crewing teams. And this is where I would certainly say Nick and I, when we recognize this problem, we sort of started with the mission to improve the lives of the crewing teams and how the crewing and crew change management is done. And this has helped us a lot in convincing the shipping industries and the operators around the value that we bring to them.
Just to add on that, I mean, everything that Narayan says, I totally echo. But I think on top of that, I would say that another reason why crew change management has been maybe not in the spotlight for innovation is that it wasn't really owned by anybody end to end, right? So it's basically it's sitting at the intersection of crewing, operations, travel, port agents, and it's very difficult actually to for any of those parties to really resolve this because everyone is just playing one part of the whole process. And I think that's another reason, and that's maybe also one of the reasons why it's to industry outsiders like us look at the problem and then come up with a solution.
With opportunities, and there's massive amounts of opportunity here. I mean, I can just listening to you, I can see the real value in all of this. As you rightly say, you're giving ownership of the process to the crewing entity. You're giving control. You're giving cost control. All of those aspects there, are being looked after and overseen by the platform. But with opportunities also come challenges. What would you say are the challenges moving forward? Because shipping is a highly fragmented industry, isn't it? It's got a lot of different geographies, different trades, different vessel types, different owners, different crew managers, different budgets, different whatever. What are the challenges? Would you say? Is it mindset change? Is it? I want to come on to optimization and AI in a minute. Is it that as well? What are your thoughts? Who wants to go for that one?
Yeah, happy to start off, and then Nick, feel free to jump in as well. I would certainly say currently, like if you immediately look at say this year, the coming year, I would certainly flag mindset as the first change that the shipping industry and the crewing organizations in shipping and companies will need to change. We would really like them to step into Nick and my shoes, for them to step into Nick and my shoes to understand the process, to understand the value of optimization and process efficiency, and to really sort of embark on this journey of improvement. Once that's sort of in place and a large part of the industry is able to recognize this and move forward, of course, the technology is changing today in so many varied ways, and the velocity of change is way higher even compared to a few years before. And I would certainly say this will continue to impact crewing as a process, as a function, just as every other function in the shipping industry. And I'm hoping that this mindset change allows every leadership in these shipping companies to absorb these continual changes that we as an industry, we as a society would sort of continue to see.
Any thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, maybe two additions. So I think fragmentation of the process, also that's something that you mentioned, Sean, is definitely still something that is a bit of a challenge because it's pretty complex process. It's very fragmented. It has lots of layers and levels and stakeholders. And of course, the product has to incorporate a lot. Being a startup, not everything works magically one day to the other, while still, of course, delivering a lot of value. I think everyone is completely aligned with our vision where Tilla will be in a couple of years, maybe in a couple of months. It just continuously to deliver as much value as possible. And then I think the second thing is that's really touching on Narayan's mindset comment is that a lot of the crewing teams or the crewing teams today, they carry an enormous amount of institutional knowledge, right? So they have the relationships with agents. They really understand their vessels, the crew, and sometimes, especially new implementations, they also feel threatened a bit by technology coming in and taking over their jobs. So there's a bit of resistance and on us, but it's especially on crewing leaders and the organizations to have an extremely good change management process in place to take away fear and basically get them excited on actually the Tilla is a great tool that will make them better what already are.
And I think that's true with AI and digitalization, and now AI. Full stop in the shipping industry. There's always been that fear that it's going to take over jobs. But I think there's an acknowledgement, a growing acknowledgement in the shipping industry that digitalization needs people. And it needs people to. AI is only as good as what it's been told to do and what's going into it. So it still needs that operational side. But also when you look at shipping, you've got elements of the shipping industry who are very slow to adopt digitalization. But that must be, and I talk specifically maybe about the Greek ship owners who notoriously rely on old ways of doing things and still know the name of their captains and all that sort of side of it. But the Greek market, for instance, is a great opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's a very big market. It has a lot of ship owners, has a lot of potential for implementing digital tools in order to streamline or to deliver impact back to shipping companies. But I think as with any market, I mean, and I think that the Greek market is not different to the German market or to the Singaporean market. It's about finding the very innovative, forward-thinking companies that want to deploy technology with their organizations to move ahead and move forward. That's the same thing in Greece as well. And of course, it might take some more time to convince them.
Narayan, before we came on air, we were talking about Posidonia and what have you, because you're going to be there. What are you looking forward to most with Posidonia, and what sort of messaging do you want to get across to the market when you meet the various stakeholders and people there in a couple of weeks' time?
Yeah, we've always seen ourselves as a good partner to the shipping industry and the ecosystem. So we've always employed a very consultative sort of posture. And that's exactly what we would still continue to love to bring back to Posidonia when we visit there again. And it's really great conversations. It's really highlighting what we've been able to do for the many customers that we're able to serve so far, share some of these stories, especially of the hard hitting crewing team stresses and how they're able to resolve them with Tilla, and just sharing the vision that we have for what a modern day crew change management looks like. So this we would certainly look to bring to the floor in Posidonia. And again, I think if you're able to help sort of nudge the mindset in the Greek market towards exploring Tilla, towards exploring a modern, digital, optimized crew changes, that would be a great success for us.
You've got a lot of offices around the world as well, haven't you? So you have been expanding in a very positive way. If we were having the same conversation in a year's time, what would you like to be telling me about Tiller and also about how maybe the market has moved on? What would you like to be saying to me? What do you think you'd be saying to me, and what would you like to be saying to me?
Yeah, Nick, do you want to take that?
I mean, I think on a pure numbers game, of course, we would love to tell you that we have tripled our customer base and the vessels that are operating on Tilla, and that a lot of that growth comes from opening new markets such as Greece, such as APAC. We're looking into Japan, looking into the Middle East. So we really understood that the true change process itself and the value that we deliver to the market doesn't really, I mean, it doesn't really differ across different geographies. Our product today is very universal and can be applied to shipping company. As the use case in itself is, of course, battery internet. And of course, we have more happy customers. Lastly, and that's more personal, but of course, I would also love to tell you that I have the exact same amount of enthusiasm for the topic and for building the company.
That's a very, very good area to finish our discussion on. But I'm looking forward to maybe catching up with you both in Posidonia. It's going to be a great, it's going to be a great week and a great, as you say, great opportunity to meet everybody there and to interact with the industry. And I always think that you come away from places like that, learning a lot more than when you went in there. And I think that's always good fun. But Nick and Narayan, thank you very, very much indeed for your time today. It's been very, very exciting to hear about the project and about the platform. Forward to following your progress really, because a lot of the points that you're saying today about the need for driving in and taking control of driving in that efficiency and taking and driving in that control on that whole crew change management process, I think is really, really exciting. And it'd be interesting to see how you guys carry on developing over the next few months and years ahead. Thank you very much indeed. Just to say to our listeners as well, you'll be listening to this on SMI onto the website. You can download the podcast and to listen at your leisure as well. And is also available on Spotify and also on YouTube. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, and look forward to seeing you in Greece.